folks, we are back, but it did not take these UB Bulls long to get started. An offensive explosion in the first half. Your Bulls lead 47-30 at half. Kev, I mean, everybody getting into the act. I think even the water boy might have got a layup there at the end of the half.
Yeah, it's what you like to see. We talked about that fast start. We got it. I was predicting that. So it was something that was definitely necessary. And this is how you lead by 15 to 20 points when you play off the start. I mean, play off the tip. You saw that today. We also were talking about bench points. I mean, when you score 0 points or 5 points off the bench, you put yourself in such a hard position for if Graves has a bad game or Segu has a bad game. You just have a lot that needs to go your way. And we've seen that go against UB this season, but not when you're getting 8 from Fagan and 9 from Skogman, 17 points there from those two, shooting 5 for 6 from 3, playing well. Two guys I'd like to see get more time going forward, really, because you have Bruton and Nickelberry, two guys we expected to add a lot, and just both putting up goose eggs again in this game. But you like what you see from Mbala coming out. Janathan Williams had not a typical Janathan game, but he's playing fairly well. Segu was 1 for 5, so you're even able to get through some of that Segu shooting percentage with great performances by others. And Graves seemed to at least be a little bit more of a contributor here with 7.4 assists and 3 rebounds, filling up that stat sheet. Maybe he upgraded to a secondary player now, and we'd like to see him take to the primary player at some point this season, Maniac. But these are all things you like to see. You're able to come through guys like Segu or Bruton or Nickelberry struggling when you have such performances like this. And quite frankly, I've dogged them for not loving their defensive performance. But in the last couple of games, you've seen really good defensive performance, really, with only Beck and Grant getting to UB. Everyone else is absolutely struggling in this game for Miami.
I was going to say, I mean, if you're a UB fan and feeling guilty that we're getting those points from Skogman and
Fagan, yeah.
And Fagan, sorry. I was trying to say Travian, but I mixed the two names. Don't feel guilty at all because James Beck is averaging 6.9 points per game, and he's got 14 at half. So Miami getting some surprising scoring as well. I think the coaching staff would tell you, I mean, despite the 47 points, I really think it was, I mean, obviously the 8 for 8 start helps. No one's going to deny that, but it was really a product of that defense. It felt like they were able to get stops and get out and transition for those good looks.
Yeah, I mean, Weitzel was under Oates as a defensive stalwart. They struggled at times defensively in the Weitzel era. But this is kind of the defensive stretch that you're looking for from him and his coaching staff, as that's what he was on on all Oates' teams to help there with forward. And you've seen great forward play under Weitzel so far in his tenure, development of Mbala. That's where he excels. The rebounding's been great. Hasn't been any of their issues, and the defense is finally coming together to really cause havoc against at least the second half of the MAC. Now we need to see this performances translate. They're 0-4 against teams above them in the standings. Bowling Green just dropped. But they got to get through the Ohio's, the Kents, the Akrons, and Toledo, who actually we dogged Ball State on the pregame show, and they beat Toledo by 20.
Yeah.
Maniac, no sense. That team's horrible.
I like it. I think that's peak February basketball. Though obviously I know most of it happened in January and it's been leading that way, but this is when the year starts to get a little bit crazy. This is when you see those crazy runs, teams getting outscored, 20-2 on the road that are, top 10, top 15 teams. A lot of good to see that craziness. And by the way, we got people chiming in. My strength and conditioning coach in high school, his name was Martin Fagan. Thank you very much for that, Joe Cons. We are rocking and rolling here. 47-30, and going back to Rob Ryan, best half we've seen in a long time. What do we need to see in the second half? Let's take away the strong run, Kev, because like we said, they've made a habit out of that. They haven't, that wouldn't even be surprising for them. Is it maybe keeping this, team under 60? Would that be the way to show that, you maintain that defensive focus and you really show that you could lock it down? That would be something that would give me a lot of confidence as a Bulls fan.
Yeah, and we talked about, I predicted they'd get to 68 on the pregame show, and I'd like to see them under that, honestly. I'd like to see them more 58, 59 now with the way that you've been playing. Yeah, you don't want to step your foot off, take your foot off the gas. That's something we've seen under this team. We've seen them struggle. I want to see them finish strong, Maniac. So we're going to talk less about the first 10. Who cares? We're going to talk about that final 5 to 7. They might be up big. But we need to see them finish them. They've struggled mightily after, the under 4 really, but really under 5 minutes. They've struggled in games. They've lost many. They're bad in one possession games. So I want to see them continue to put their foot on the gas and not have any problems down the stretch. And don't let them into it. I mean, you don't want to get them under single digits, even though I wouldn't be worried. You still want to I want to see this defense. UB shooting can go cold. We've all seen it. We've all seen it happen for large portions of this season. So let's keep that shooting percentage standard. Might regress a little bit to the mean, but at the same time, let's play some defense. That's something that you don't need a regression on in the second half. So let's keep it up. Let's let their bench try to outscore UB starters. Beck, like you mentioned, is already double over his average. Don't see much more out of Beck.
Without Beck, if Beck was having his average game, they'd be in a world of trouble.
It'd be a ton of pain. Grant's a pretty good player himself, but they're hitting, Grant's 4 for 5 from 3, but other than Grant, they're shooting horribly. If it wasn't for Grant equally, they're not making jump shots. So you want to keep that defensive ball pressure up. You don't want to let them into it. You don't want to battle here. You want to get this game in the books. You want to play good defense. You want to raise that KenPom score that some people care about. And you want to continue to make a presence in the MAC to know that, yeah, we might be in the 5 seed right now. We might be in the 4, 5, or 6 seed. You don't want to play us in March, though. And that's the kind of thing that they want to do. They have a tough finish to the season, 5 games against the top teams in the conference. And then you go 3-2 in that Maniac straight up. And it starts here tonight. And it starts here in the second half of this Miami game to show that, yeah, we're 20 points better than Miami. We're not going to make this a 7-point game.
Love to see it. Let's lock it down. And speaking of lock it down, let's just go around the scoreboard real quick for some top 25 action. We were talking about how this is the time of the year it gets crazy. You got West Virginia leading Kansas 44-32. But here's some crazy scores we were talking about. You got undefeated Drake on the road at 6-11 Valparaiso, Kev. You would be losing your mind as a Drake fan right now. Come on, down 43-35 at half. From an undefeated 17-0 Drake team, obviously ranked in the top 25. Oklahoma with a big win over Iowa State. Alabama falling on the road to Missouri 68-65. A late flurry for Alabama, beating Missouri by 13 points in the second half. Couldn't do it. And then you had Virginia Tech eking out a win, only allowing 2 points in the entire overtime period to Miami. But again, Miami a 7-11 team. Valpo a 6-11 team. You see, this isn't necessarily just a stocking win season. This is when those teams with nothing to play for kind of lash out. So let's make sure we lock it down in the second half. Any one player you're looking at?
Actually, that's Drake's score reminds me of when UB lost to NIU under Oates on the ranked years. It's just one of those things where you got to overcome some of those tough, scrappy games. But if I'm looking at UB specifically, I'd like to see, I'm getting what I want out of the bench. I'd like to see, we talked about Graves a lot in the pregame. I'd like to see him take over here and show that against a lesser team, he can be dominant. I'd like to see Segu play a little better offensively, as he's got 5 assists, which is a really good number, shooting 1 for 5. So I'd like to see him pick it up just a touch. Janaathan pick it up, but I think I'm looking at Segu. I want to see what he does in this game down the stretch. And if he gets that scoring touch by, UB's up 30. So I'd rather that than him continue to struggle. Maybe some of those offensive players, start to dwindle a little bit, and we can't rely on Skogman and they make it a single-digit game. That's what I'm trying to avoid in this Maniac. I want to see Segu pick it up offensively, and I want to see Janaathan, shoot a little bit better himself. Other than that, those are the things I'm looking for, and I think it's a 20-plus point win, as I said in the pregame show. I want to see that defensive number. I don't want to see him back down and let him get to 70 and win by 8. That's what I'm trying to avoid.
We are going Tom Petty in the second half. We won't back down. Keep an eye on here for UB basketball. As always, our guy Kev, I'm Maniac. Keep an eye on at Bullet Point 716 for that insider UB coverage. And of course, keep it tuned to TrainwreckSports.com for all things Bulls. Let's get him in the second half. 20 minutes from a big WAC win, moving our way up in the conference like the Jeffersons. Let's go Bulls.